How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. We just had something really interesting happen. We've had a lot of big economic data, and we just had Trump completely 180, saying that he does not want to be held accountable for this. This is not his stock market. It's not his fault that the market's falling down. This is Joe Biden's fault. We also have gotten some crazy economic data, which has shifted the market. We continue to see more accumulation on Bitcoin as well. If you don't mind, hit subscribe so you can see future videos just like this. Also, if you want to trade crypto, there are links underneath the video to Weeks, Blowfin, BitUnix, BTCC, and CoinW. You can start trading in just a few minutes. I think now's a great time to be trading because I still think there's significant upside, but there's some uncertainty, which provides us better buying in prices. Now, we had PCE come in today. Inflation was actually a little bit higher than expected. Okay, so that right by itself, a little bit concerning for people, right? We see inflation coming down, but when it comes in a little bit higher and people are worried about tariffs, it can cause some people to think that the Fed's not going to cut rates. But we also saw ADP employment come in lower than expected. We saw the job market is a little bit worse than expectations. Analysts were projecting, 120,000, and it was like 65, something like that. And we also had GDP come in negative for the first time in 3 years. Okay, so this is kind of like a worst case scenario for markets, right? If inflation comes in higher, the economy is worse, and the job market is worse. It also is really interesting, though, with Trump saying, hey, this is not my stock market. He posts on Truth Social, like, hey, I've only been in the office for a couple months now. This is not my stock market. This is fallout because of Biden. Yet, a year and 3 months ago, he was posting that his polls were so good that the market was pricing in a Trump victory, and they were so excited for him to win. So it's fascinating where we're at. Now, Bitcoin fell down on some of this news, but it's actually jumping up a little bit. It's at 94.2 last time I looked. And while the S&P 500 and NASDAQ are down a couple percent on the day, I think the market is now starting to price in a better chance that the Fed's going to cut rates. And at the end of the day, the only reason I can think of that the Fed isn't cutting rates aggressively or more aggressively is fears over future tariffs. Or inflation from tariffs. So when there's uncertainty, they're just playing it slowly. However, you see GDP coming down, so the economy is not doing as well. That starts to tug on their dual mandate, right? They have no mandate saying that they have to keep us away from recession, but they have an employment mandate, right? If we go into a recession, less jobs are going to be created. They're looking at those numbers, right? The GDP number coming in is one of their key factors that they look at, I'm sure, because they need jobs. Now, jobs coming in a little bit softer as well does cause some concern. So if inflation is handled, then they're going to be focusing on job growth, which means cutting rates, right? Quantitative easing. The Treasury is looking at like a new round of repurchases as well. So they're not quantitative easing, they say, but they basically are, right? They're providing more liquidity to the market. So the Fed is in a very interesting spot where if Trump can just get something where he can say, yeah, we won, right? We had 0 tariffs. Now we have 10%, and maybe 15 or 20% on China, whatever it is, right? If he can get something that he can write off as a win, where we're making a couple $100 billion more a year, even if it doesn't really lower income taxes that much, but if he just gets a win on paper, then he can also go to the Fed, or the Fed can notice that, hey, we're in a pretty tough situation and we need rates to come down. We need higher liquidity. So, there's not this huge concern and uncertainty over tariffs. Okay, well, now we can start lowering rates because we want to keep the job market nice and tight. And bada boom, we're right back at 5% rates on mortgages. We're right back into 5% commercial loans, and you're getting 1 or 2% on your bank account or your savings account as opposed to 4%. That helps in a variety of different ways, but it also one of the things I'm thinking about specifically is it causes people to want to invest in the market. They go more risk on, right? They go into assets like Bitcoin and the NASDAQ. And yeah, it's an interesting place that we're in. So all this economic data that came out today doesn't at all hamper my long-term view on the market. And I think it maybe even helps the midterm view. Again, like this just means that there's more of a tighter clock. I don't know I'm even saying today. That it just means that there's a shorter time frame that we have to deal with these tariffs, I think. Right? Like Trump does not want the US to go into recession, and 1 quarter of negative GDP growth is now booked. So he does not want like his first 2 quarters in the office to show recession. Now, of course, he might say what he said on Truth Social, which is, hey, this is not my market. Like I came in, this is not my fault. Biden already set it up this way. But still, it is a bit of an asterisk on your resume. So I'm not sure I don't think he wants that, but he also needs something that shows as a win, right? That he can say is a win for tariffs. So yeah, just an interesting situation that we're in. So the market selling off, I don't think is that big of a concern. There's going to be more volatility. Inflation, while it did come in higher than expected, we saw CPI numbers and PPI numbers earlier this month that were better than expected. And I mean, we're sitting around 2 to 3% inflation. That's low enough for the Fed to start cutting rates, but still there's uncertainty over the future. Let me know your thoughts on all this underneath the video. We continue to see BlackRock buy more and more Bitcoin, and yesterday I think the ETFs bought around 150 to 250 million in Bitcoin. That's the 9th day in a row that they've been 9-figure accumulators of Bitcoin. That does drain the supply, and that eventually does push up the price. I've seen people online saying, hey, how come the ETFs have been buying for the last 9 days and MicroStrategy's buying, but yet the price isn't going up? Well, over the last 9 days, the price is up $10,000. So, like, the price of Bitcoin has gone up. People just, look at the last 3 or 4 or 5 days, and it's been in a very tight range. Keep in mind, every buyer has a seller. It just is dependent on what the buyers are willing to buy at and what the sellers are willing to sell at. So, just because someone's buying doesn't necessarily mean that there's like this, there's going to be this massive tick up in price. But that does kind of show an insatiable demand if you see 9 figures a day being bought up, and it is by an ETF, so they're not really pricing out they're not focusing on the price. Sorry, driving around street cleaner there, but they're not saying, oh, 95's too rich for our blood, we're gonna wait. But maybe their buyers are doing that, but I don't even think that's really the case, because the buyers right now are more worried about tariffs and macro than they are about $95,000 versus $92,000 Bitcoin. They're not pricing it out saying, well, I'm willing to buy at 92 but not 95. No, these are more people that are like, hey, I think we're going to go more risk on, and I want some Bitcoin because it's the best risk on asset. So yeah, we're in an interesting time. Tons of uncertainty, but also that is the best time to be accumulating assets for the long term. When there's certainty, that's where the big money comes in. Like I said, they're not really price sensitive. They don't care that they're buying at $110,000 Bitcoin, 150, 90, 70, 50, right? They want clarity. They're willing to pay more if there's clarity on the macro. So we're in a good place, in my opinion. Let me know your thoughts, though, underneath the video. If you do want to start trading crypto, there are links underneath. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.